Okay, we're live. We're good. No, good morning.
Hi.
So everybody, this is Dr. Sebastian Gorka. I've known him for about 2 years now. He was so generous to come to Pittsburgh and talk to us about the dangers of communism, socialism, and Marxism. For anybody who isn't familiar, his parents escaped communism in Hungary, and he grew up in England, and I believe your parents moved back, didn't they? Once everything
After the fall of the Berlin Wall, yes, they moved back to Hungary.
Okay. I was just telling him that we did an unofficial poll the other day, and I was just wondering, why is it that so many kids nowadays, they really don't understand the ramifications of these Marxist ideas, these socialist ideas, and in the poll I asked whether if you, your kids, or your grandkids learned anything in public school about any of these topics. And I actually have some figures right here. 54 respondents said very, very little to none at all. And 30 had commented that they had some education to kind of none at all. They still didn't understand really what was the difference. Many, even though they were taught about it a lot during the Cold War, they're still utterly confused between what is Marxism, socialism, and communism. What do you think about that?
Well, it's just a confirmation of everything we already know. Every year, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, an amazing organization here in DC, does a poll with YouGov. And last year's poll came with the shocking end result that 72% of millennials in America would prefer to live in a socialist or communist America. So this is despite the fact that the ideology of Karl Marx cost the lives of more than 100 million people in the last century, from the Soviet Union to Vietnam. The death toll, forget the labor camps, just the death toll is more than 100 million people. You're asking me why it is that so many people in America aren't familiar with the reality that my parents lived through and so many across the world have suffered under and still are suffering under in China, in Cuba, in North Korea. It's very simple. The culpability for that ignorance is us. If you want to know how it is that 72% of American kids would like to live under communism, we conservatives are responsible. Why? After the 1968 violence in America, the people who were behind it, people like Bernardine Dawn, Bill Ayers, Students for a Democratic Society, the Weather Underground, they failed. They wanted to engender a Marxist revolution with the violence that they executed across America, and they failed. Did they surrender? Did they give up? No. They started to listen to the writings of people like Saul Alinsky, Antonio Gramsci, Horkheimer, Marcuse, who said in a developed country that has a robust middle class with strong Judeo-Christian values, a revolution will always fail. Communism can only come to fruition through violence in backward nations with large peasant populations like Russia or China. In America, it's not going to work. We have a very strong, robust middle class. So if you want to have socialism in America, if you want to have communism, you've got to undermine the institutions of society. You've got to from the inside, not blowing stuff up, not shooting people, but becoming high school teachers, becoming college professors. Bernardine Dawn and Bill Ayers, of the terrorists from the Weather Underground, the couple in whose living room Barack Obama's political career was launched, after being terrorists, and this isn't a joke, people can look it up, became tenured professors in Chicago. So they realized that what Trotsky, what Hitler, what Stalin had said, give me their children and I will own their future, is true. And they started teaching the garbage of socialism in our schools, in our high schools. If you look at the most popular textbook on history in America, it's Howard Zinn's A People's History of America. Howard Zinn was an avowed Marxist. Howard Zinn's book is about how America is the problem, how America is inherently racist, how America is this source of oppression, not just domestically, but internationally. And we conservatives allowed that to become the most influential text in teaching across high schools and colleges in America. So, you know, the ignorance is not a function of lack of education, it's a function of indoctrination. Kids have been taught by the likes of Bill Ayers, Bernardine Dawn, that America is bad, not the greatest nation on God's earth, is literally evil, and that socialism is a utopia, will create justice, will create equality, and they leave out the fact it's never worked. 40 nations have tried it since Karl Marx wrote Das Kapital. Every single one of those nations ended in dictatorship, so it's never worked. And secondly, it creates oppression wherever it is tried. It may talk of utopianism, but it ends up with labor camps, it ends up with gulags, it ends up with what you're seeing in China today with Uyghurs being herded blindfold in cattle cars. If you haven't seen that image, that's what communism results in. And what's the difference between socialism and communism? You don't have to overthink it. You just read what Karl Marx wrote. Socialism is just the transition way between democracy and full-blown communism. Socialism is the penultimate stage that every nation that wants to be communist must move through to become communist. And you know, the ignorance is a function of truly, Denise, of indoctrination.
So really this whole democratic socialist, it's just voting yourself into the ability to
exactly.
vote yourself into
there's no such
communism.
thing as there's no such thing as democratic socialism, because eventually only one party is allowed to exist, and you only get to choose that one party. And it's a con job. It's a shell game. If you look at, you know, what the Democrat Party is proposing today, think about the things they're saying. Kamala Harris has gone on record. Not only will the Democrats give taxpayer-funded health care to at least 11 million illegal immigrants, Kamala Harris has said, you don't need personal health insurance. We're just going to nationalize it all. You don't get to choose what doctor you go to. You don't get to choose the plan or the coverage you want. We the politicians, are going to decide. That's socialism, when your choices, not just your political choices, but your everyday choices, are restricted by politicians. That's what the Democrat Party has become. And this is the sad truth, that the Democrat Party of your parents, your grandparents, is dead. It's gone. JFK, a strong hawk on national security, JFK would not be allowed into the Democrat Party today. It's dead, it's buried, it's being run by radicals with a candidate at the top of the ticket who's senile, who's an empty shell. Joe Biden is just a corrupt, old, senile man who will be a Trojan horse for all the extremists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, who, by the way, let me just add here, you don't have to believe anything I say, you can check it for yourself. Bernie Sanders, when he got married, honeymooned in the Soviet Union, when it was the Soviet Union, when it was a dictatorship that was one of the most anti-Semitic regimes in the world. And he went there by free choice as an American Jew to celebrate his honeymoon. That's how dedicated these people are to communism and socialism.
Yes, you know, and it's so shocking. Many of us in PA, particularly middle PA to southwestern PA, western PA, we all have the same backgrounds. We're all either German, Italian, or Eastern European descent. And like for me, my dad was, I believe his mom was a first generation Polish immigrant. They grew up on the, like literally, not in a van down by the river, but in a houseboat down by the river. 10 kids to the houseboat. They had to quit school at about age 11 or 12, go work in the factory. They actually worked in, and it's not Bugs Bunny, they actually worked in the Acme factory nearby. And my Aunt Jackie, my grandmother's sister, she either had 2 or 3 fingers chopped off in the factory. And I mean, they worked so hard. My dad was, he was completely JFK Democrat, like so many of our parents, grandparents, whomever in this area. And it is definitely not the party of JFK anymore. My dad was, how long? 50-year member of Local 66, Local Union 66, operating engineers. He bought everything American. He was very, if you don't like this place, get out, like that kind of guy. He was a pretty rough guy, told it like it is. And I think you may remember me saying he passed away a couple years ago, and by that point he was just so disgusted with politics. Like, he didn't want to talk about it whatsoever. I mean, he lived and breathed the Union. That was his life. And we did not even question who we voted for. Like, you just zip, like you just, you know, you were looked at like your head was exploded. It was crazy. I mean, we were taught that Democrats are for the middle class, or for the little guy, and that Republicans, I mean, I didn't know any Republicans. I knew zero. All of my friends' parents we were working class. And I mean, I just remember thinking, like, in middle and high school, like, oh my God, like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're Republican? Like, what is wrong with you? And but that's what I was taught up until college, until I started traveling and really opened up my eyes and kind of came to my own decision, seeing how people live in even Germany. What is it? Like, you live, you make pretty good money. A great portion is taxed away. You live in some dinky IKEA furnished apartment. I mean, how does this make any sense? But what is so frightening is how quickly everything can change. Where I grew up, it was a nice neighborhood. I mean, I graduated over 20 years ago, but and I got out around 20 years ago, and but my neighborhood, I'm not gonna lie, it's so bad now. I don't even know what the percentage is of Section 8 housing. It's just, it's so bad. I mean, it's on the news every night for drug deals, shootings, you name it, whatever. But I would say in a matter of 10 to 15 years, the neighborhood had changed drastically. And if you say anything against it, these communist policies like Section 8 housing, whatever, which to me is a direct attack on the middle class, you know, you're a bigot, you're racist, whatever.
The Democrat Party, to be very clear, the Democrat Party has betrayed the American people. Mm-hmm. If you look at the Great Society, LBJ, the attempts to do away with poverty, since government got involved with helping the less fortunate in society, we have invested trillions, not billions, but trillions of dollars in fighting the war on poverty. Today, the poverty levels in America 50 years later are the same as a percentage of the population. We could have just taken those trillions of dollars and put gasoline on them and lit them and had the same effect on poverty. Why? Because America is not about handouts. It's about your grandfather, your great-grandfather coming here to make a living for themselves.
You know what? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but speaking of, like, we totally, I mean, there's not a shame. Well, I guess there is. My family, my grandparents, my dad, he would rather die than take a handout. Like, what happened to that? You know?
It's very easy what happened to that. How it happened is government, because of left-wing policies, incentivized dependence. When we created federal programs that made it so that a single mother would get more money than a married mother. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to look at your benefit check and say, why should I get married? I'm just going to keep having babies and have more money given to me by Uncle Sam. That's how you destroy the working class. That's how you destroy the Black community in America as well. So, you know, I didn't come up with this, but Candace Owens uses the phrase, the political plantation. Let's remember the Democrats were the party of the KKK. The Democrats were the party of slavery. The first Republican president ever was Abraham Lincoln. That's why the Republican Party was created, to eventually bring us emancipation in America. When we look at the history of politics in America, it's the left that has been divisive. It's the left that has been racist. And now, very successfully, since the beginning of the 20th century, they've replaced the plantation of slavery. They've replaced the cotton field plantation with a political one, with a dependency on handouts that you don't need to think, we will give you what you need, but not to succeed, Denise, to keep you on a level of subsistence so you are beholden to the Democrat Party for the rest of your life. When it comes to understanding what this nation truly represents, look, I'm an immigrant. I chose this country because I believe in America. I believe it's the greatest nation the world has ever seen. And I just, if you haven't seen it, I want all of your viewers to go back and watch. I think it was day 2 of the Republican convention, where the Cuban immigrant, Maximo Alvarez, spoke about coming here as a child. He was one of the Peter Pan children who was allowed to escape communist Cuba. And that man's speech was everything we're fighting for. He said, I came here as a child. I escaped communism. I've built myself up to be one of the most successful businessmen in Florida. I've seen communism, and we cannot have it come here. And right now, the Democrat Party represents everything I fled from as a child. So listen to those voices. Nobody in the history of mankind has risked their life and the life of their children and their families to escape to a socialist regime, to escape to a communist regime. People from Cuba literally build rafts out of plastic bottles and scraps of wood so they can try to cross shark-infested waters to come to America. But if the Democrats win, there will be nowhere else to run to, because we will have lost it. That's why the stakes are so crucial. And that's why you guys are great. You've been doing amazing work. God bless you. But I want all of your viewers, all of your listeners to understand that I don't care whether you're 18 or 98, this is the most consequential election of your lifetime. And you guys are very active, you're patriots, but I want you to ask yourself a very simple question. Am I doing enough to make sure that we save this republic for the next 54 days? It's not just writing checks to the local candidates or the local GOP. You have to be, like Denise, you have to be on social media. You have to be talking to those who haven't decided who they're going to vote for. You have to volunteer to make phone calls for the president. Everybody, wherever you are, whether you're in a Democrat stronghold or not, you can make phone calls for the president. You can go to trumptalk.gop. That's trumptalk.gop. You can volunteer for the campaign at donaldjtrump.com. You can go to trumpvictory.com. Every single one of us, at the end of every single day for the next 54 days, has to say, okay, before I go to bed, before I say my prayers, did I do enough for the president? The man who left everything behind, his billion-dollar lifestyle, didn't even take a check for working for the American people. He has stood in the breach for us. He has taken the slings and arrows. What am I doing now? It's less than 2 months. What am I doing now to make sure that I do my part to save the nation?
Thank you for that. What would you say, real world scenario, say you're downtown, you're out to dinner, say like you have an opportunity where someone's actually listening, one of these Antifa people, like a good 1 minute, here is why, blah, blah, blah. Because I'm thinking people are in these situations every day. You're in the checkout line. You might be having dinner and having your dinner interrupted. I mean, these are children. I mean, the vast majority of these people are children. To me, they're children. They just don't know. They're purely ignorant. Like, what do you think would be a good 30-second here? I mean, I don't want to say here's why, because nobody wants to be told that they're wrong, but
Yeah.
this is a
So
better way, blah, blah, blah.
there's no universal script because the issues vary so greatly. I'll just give you a tactic. The people that have empowered the radical left have done so because they have been leveraged, not based upon any logical argument using data. What has been leveraged is an emotional argument. It's always about emotions. It's not about GDP growth data. It's about wouldn't it be nice if we had justice and peace? I mean, it's emotional arguments. So you have to use those tactics. You have to appeal to their emotional intelligence, not necessarily their reasoned logic. So here's an example on one issue, but it's not the issue that matters, it's the tactic. So one of the most controversial policies, one of the key policies that got my boss, the president, elected, is the war, is immigration reform and the war. And let's talk about how you convince a liberal that the wall is important. It's very easy. So you say, hey, immigration, that's a really tough topic, right? Did you know that according to left-wing organizations like Human Rights Watch, like the United Nations, these aren't Trump organizations, these are liberal organizations. Mm-hmm. Do you know that more than 60% of all women and young girls who are trafficked across the border are sexually assaulted and raped? Did you know that? And when they say no, you keep talking and you say, did you know that because of government policies in America, if you cross the border illegally and you have a child with you, they're not allowed to deport you because they call that a family unit. Well, did you know that there are families, there are mothers in Juarez province of North Mexico that rent out their babies for $50 a day to the coyotes, so that when that group crosses the border, they can hold up a baby to the Customs and Border Patrol guys, and they don't get deported from the country. And then the kid is smuggled back and rented out the next day. And then they go, oh my gosh, really? And then you hit them with the gut punch and you say, don't you think it's bad that girls are being raped? Don't you think 2-year-old babies shouldn't be rented out? And when they go, oh no, of course, that's awful. Then you say, well, the best thing to protect the girls and the children is to build the wall. So you've got to get them to the same place, mm-hmm. but you've got to play on their emotions. I've only got a couple of minutes left, and I think my phone's going to die in a second. So is there any other big question I can help you with?
You know what? Let's see. I'm just going to see really quick if we have any questions in the group.
Right.
Oh, no. Where are you going?
I'm here. I'm
sorry.
I'm just checking my battery.
Okay, no questions as of yet. It's still pretty early, but you know what? We're working on it like we do every day, and it's just so amazing. I did another unofficial poll last night. How many people just recently switched over, and how that felt, and how it felt to be deceived for that many years by academics or the mainstream media. And really, it's just it runs from utter shock and disbelief to anger, and then it's kind of like the process of grief, and then finally acceptance and relief. So yeah, we're just we're trudging through day by day.
Well, thank you for everything you do, and look, it is really imperative that everyone understands Every single person matters. Not just every vote, but every single person matters, and you can make a difference. If you just do one thing, you can volunteer for the campaign, you can write checks. If you do just one thing, promise me that you will take 10 people to the polling stations who otherwise wouldn't vote, or get 10 people registered. It's super easy to register people to vote. Some people have never voted. Some people in their 40s and 50s have never voted. Get them to register to vote. And then for those people you know are going to stay home on polling day, just offer to give them a ride to the polling station. If everyone you know does this, we can win and we can save our nation.
I believe we're going to. So, all right, well, have a great morning, and thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it.
Anytime. God bless. Keep doing what you do.